the Easy Speak podcast.
Learn English through real conversations.
Hello, and welcome back to the Easy Speak podcast. I am so glad you are here today.
Hey everyone, welcome. Whether this is your first time listening or you have been with us for a while, we are really happy you decided to spend some time with us today.
This podcast is a space where we talk about real-life topics in calm, clear English. And we do that because we believe that the best way to improve your listening is to hear real conversations about things that actually matter.
Not textbook stuff, not boring grammar drills, just two people talking about life in a way that helps you grow both as a language learner and as a person.
Exactly. And today's topic is one that I personally feel very strongly about. We are going to talk about self-doubt.
Oh, self-doubt. Yeah, this is a big one.
It really is. And I think almost everyone can relate to this topic, no matter where you are from or what language you speak.
That is so true. Self-doubt does not care about your nationality, it does not care about your age or your background. It just shows up whenever it wants.
Like an unwanted guest.
Exactly. An unwanted guest who never calls before coming over.
So today we are going to explore what self-doubt really is, where it comes from, how it affects our everyday lives, and most importantly, how we can start to work through it.
And we will do all of this in natural, conversational English. So if you are learning English, this is a great way to practice your listening while also thinking about something meaningful.
Okay, so let us start at the beginning. What is self-doubt?
Right. So in simple words, self-doubt is when you do not feel confident about yourself. You question your abilities. You wonder if you are good enough. You are not sure if you can do something, even when maybe you actually can.
I love how you put that. You aren't sure if you can do something, even when you actually can. That's the painful part of it, right? Because self-doubt often doesn't have anything to do with your actual ability.
No, it doesn't. It's more about how you see yourself. It's about the story you tell yourself inside your head.
The inner voice.
Yes, that little voice. And sometimes that voice is not very kind.
No, it can be really harsh. I think most people, if they really listened to how they talked to themselves inside their minds, they would be a little shocked.
That's a really good point. We would never speak to a close friend the way we sometimes speak to ourselves.
Never. If a friend came to me and said, "I'm thinking about starting a new project," I would say, "That sounds amazing. You should go for it."
Right, you would be supportive.
But if I'm the one thinking about starting something new, suddenly that inner voice says, "Are you sure you're ready? What if you fail? What if people laugh at you? What if it's not good enough?"
Yes, the standards we apply to ourselves are so much harsher than the ones we apply to the people we love.
And that's worth thinking about, because if you wouldn't say those things to your best friend, why are you saying them to yourself?
That question alone can be a real wake-up call.
It really can. Okay, let's talk about where self-doubt actually comes from, because I think it helps to understand the roots of something before you can start to change it.
I agree. Where do you think it starts?
Well, I think a big part of it starts in childhood. When we are young, we are very sensitive to what the people around us say. Our parents, our teachers, our classmates, their words shape how we see ourselves.
That makes a lot of sense. If someone was told as a child that they were not smart or not talented, or that they were too slow or too clumsy, those words can stick around for a very long time.
Much longer than people realize. And the tricky thing is that as adults, we often don't even remember where those beliefs came from. We just feel them. They feel like facts.
Right, like they are just true. Like the sky is blue and the sun is round and I'm not good at public speaking.
Ha, exactly. It feels like a fixed truth, but it's not.
Okay, so let me stop us here for a second, because you just used a phrase I want to highlight. You said fixed truth, and I think this connects to something really important in English, the word fixed.
Oh, yes, good catch. In this context, fixed means something that cannot change, something that's permanent. If you say something is fixed, you're saying it's set, it's locked, it will always be that way.
Like a fixed mindset. You believe your abilities are fixed. You're born with a certain amount of intelligence or talent, and that's all you'll ever have.
Yes, exactly. As opposed to a growth mindset, which means you believe you can improve and develop over time.
So you might say, I used to have a fixed mindset about my English, but now I believe I can grow. That's a great use of fixed.
Perfect sentence. And the idea of the growth mindset is something we should probably talk more about later in this episode because it's very connected to self-doubt.
Agreed, but let's keep going with where self-doubt comes from. You talked about childhood. What else?
Another big source of self-doubt is comparison. We compare ourselves to other people all the time.
Oh, this one is huge, especially now with social media.
Massive. Before social media, you might compare yourself to the people in your neighborhood, or your coworkers, or your classmates, a relatively small group of people.
But now you can compare yourself to millions of people from around the world at any time, day or night.
And those aren't even real, complete pictures of people's lives. What you see on social media is carefully selected. It's the best moments, the beautiful photographs, the achievements, the celebrations.
Nobody posts, today I sat in my pajamas and ate chips and accomplished absolutely nothing and I feel kind of lost.
Nobody does, but that's also a real part of life for everyone.
Everyone. But because we only see the highlights of other people's lives, we start to feel like we're the only ones who are struggling, and that feeds self-doubt.
It does. And there's another layer to this too. We tend to compare our behind the scenes with someone else's highlight reel. That phrase, behind the scenes, is interesting, actually.
Oh, let's break that down. Behind the scenes. In film or television, the scenes behind the camera are the messy, unpolished, unscripted moments, the stuff you don't show the audience.
So in life, your behind the scenes is all the effort, the mistakes, the bad days, the moments of doubt and confusion that nobody else sees.
And someone else's highlight reel is the best, most polished version of what they choose to share.
So when you compare those two things, of course you feel like you're falling behind, because it's not a fair comparison at all.
That's such a useful way to think about it. Your messy reality versus someone else's curated image.
And curated is another great word here. When something is curated, it means it's been carefully chosen and arranged, like a museum curator selects only the best pieces to display.
So when someone curates their social media, they are carefully choosing what to show and what to hide.
Exactly, which is fine. Everyone does it to some degree. But the problem comes when we forget that everyone is doing it, and we start to believe that what we see is the full picture.
I think this is something a lot of people understand logically, but still fall into emotionally.
Oh, absolutely. You can know something in your head and still feel it differently in your heart. That gap between knowledge and feeling is something humans deal with all the time.
I know that sugar is not great for me. I still eat it.
Yes, exactly. Knowing something isn't always enough to change behavior.
So understanding where self-doubt comes from is helpful, but I think the more urgent question is, how does it show up in daily life? What does self-doubt actually look like?
Great question. And I think this is where things get really personal, because self-doubt can look different for different people.
For some people, it might stop them from applying for a job they're qualified for.
Right. They look at the job description and instead of thinking, I can learn what I don't know yet, they think, I don't have everything they're asking for, so I shouldn't even try.
For others, it might show up in relationships. They might not express how they really feel because they're afraid of being judged or rejected.
Yes, they might think, if this person really knew me, they wouldn't like me, which is a painful thought to carry.
And sometimes self-doubt shows up in the smallest things, like you have an idea in a meeting, but you don't say it because you're not sure if it's good enough.
And then someone else says exactly the same idea 5 minutes later, and everyone loves it. Oh, that hurts.
It does, but it happens because self-doubt told you to stay quiet. It told you that your idea wasn't worth sharing.
And the cruel thing is that self-doubt often keeps us from the very things that would help us grow and feel more confident.
That's so true, because confidence doesn't actually come before action, it comes from action.
Say more about that. I think that's really important. Well, a lot of people think, once I feel confident enough, I'll try. But that's backwards. Confidence is built through experience. It's built through doing things even when you're uncertain. The more you do something, the more familiar it becomes, and then the fear slowly reduces.
So waiting to feel confident before you act can actually keep you stuck forever.
Exactly. You have to act first, and then the confidence follows, not the other way around.
That reminds me of something I once read. The idea that courage is not the absence of fear, it is acting despite the fear.
Yes, I love that. Courage is not about not being afraid, it's about doing the thing even though you are afraid.
And I think that applies to self-doubt too. You do not have to stop doubting yourself completely before you can move forward. You just have to move forward anyway.
Which is easier said than done, of course, but it's worth remembering.
Let's talk about a specific situation. Imagine someone who wants to learn a new language. Maybe they're learning English right now, like our listeners.
Okay, I love this example.
So they know some English, maybe they're at an intermediate level, but every time they try to speak, self-doubt shows up. They worry about their accent. They're afraid of making grammar mistakes. They feel embarrassed.
So, what do? They stay quiet. They listen instead of speaking. They understand a lot, but they don't practice actually using the language.
And the problem is, the only way to improve your speaking is to speak.
Yes, you cannot think your way to better speaking. You have to actually open your mouth and say the words.
And every time you stay quiet because of self-doubt, you're missing a chance to improve.
And here's something interesting. Native speakers make mistakes too. English speakers who grew up speaking English their whole lives still use the wrong word sometimes, still stumble over sentences, still say, wait, let me rephrase that.
Right. The goal is not perfection. The goal is communication.
And if you can communicate, if the other person understands you, then you have succeeded. The accent and the occasional grammar slip are completely okay.
I think that's so freeing, actually. You do not have to sound like a BBC news anchor to have a real conversation.
No, you just have to be understood. And most of the time, you will be.
Okay, let's pause here for another vocabulary moment, because you used a phrase I want to break down. You said stumble over sentences. What does that mean exactly?
Good question. To stumble usually means to trip when you're walking, to almost fall. But when we say someone stumbles over words, it means they have difficulty saying them smoothly. They stop and start, they hesitate. They might say the wrong word and then correct themselves.
Like if someone is nervous in a presentation and they say, the results of the study showed that they're stumbling over their words.
Exactly. And again, this happens to everyone. Even very experienced speakers stumble sometimes when they're tired or nervous or thinking quickly.
So if you stumble over your English sometimes, you're in very good company.
Very good company indeed.
All right, so we've talked about what self-doubt is, where it comes from, and how it shows up. Let's get into the part that I think people are most hungry for, which is, what can we actually do about it?
Yes, let's get into some real practical ideas. And I want to say up front that these are not magic fixes. Self-doubt is something that many people work with their whole lives. It doesn't just disappear overnight.
Right, it's not like you follow 3 steps and suddenly you're never afraid again.
No, but you can absolutely develop a healthier relationship with self-doubt. You can learn to hear that voice without letting it control you.
I like that framing, a healthier relationship with self-doubt. Not getting rid of it, but changing how you respond to it.
Exactly, because the voice might not go away completely, but it doesn't have to be the loudest voice in the room.
Okay, first idea, what would you say?
The first thing I would say is to notice the voice. Just become aware of it. So often we live on autopilot. The self-doubt thought comes, and before we even realize it's happened, we've already decided not to try something.
So the first step is just to catch it, to say, oh, that's self-doubt talking right now.
Yes, give it a little distance. Instead of saying, I'm not good enough, say, I notice I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough. That tiny shift in language can create a little space between you and the thought.
That's really interesting. Just by changing how you describe the thought, it makes it feel a little less like a fact.
Exactly, because I'm not good enough sounds like a truth, but I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough makes it clear that this is just a thought, just something the mind is producing, not necessarily the truth.
And thoughts aren't facts. That's something worth really sitting with.
It is. Thoughts are not facts. Just because your mind says something doesn't make it true.
Okay, what's the second idea?
The second thing I would suggest is to look at the evidence. When self-doubt says, I'm not good enough, or you're going to fail, ask yourself, what is the actual evidence for this?
Like a detective.
Yes, like a detective. Be curious, not emotional. Ask, has this happened before? Have I tried something like this before and failed? And more importantly, have I tried things that I was afraid of and actually succeeded?
Because most people have done things that scared them and came out okay.
Most people have, and we tend to remember the failures more vividly than the successes. But if you sit down and think about it honestly, there's probably plenty of evidence that you're more capable than your self-doubt tells you are.
I've heard this called building your confidence file, like a mental folder where you keep evidence of times you succeeded, times you were brave, times things went better than you expected.
I love that, a confidence file, and you can actually make it a real thing. Some people write it down, a notebook where they record small wins, things they did well, things that went right.
Because our brains are very good at highlighting what went wrong and downplaying what went right. We need to actively counteract that.
The technical term for this in psychology is negativity bias. Our brains are wired to pay attention to negative experiences than positive ones.
Oh, that's actually really reassuring in a strange way. Like if I dwell on my failures more than my successes, it's not because I'm broken. It's because my brain is doing what it evolved to do.
Exactly. The negativity bias actually helped our ancestors survive. If you remembered the dangerous situation more clearly than the safe one, you were less likely to walk into danger again.
So the brain is trying to protect us, but in modern life it can work against us.
Precisely. And once you understand that, you can start to work with your brain instead of against it. You can consciously choose to pay more attention to the positive evidence.
Okay, third idea for dealing with self-doubt?
Third one, talk to yourself the way you would talk to a good friend. Oh, you mentioned this at the beginning. Yes, and I want to come back to it because I think it's one of the most powerful things you can do. There's actually a lot of research on this. It's called self-compassion.
Self-compassion. Compassion for yourself.
Right. Compassion means understanding and kindness towards someone who's suffering, and self-compassion means extending that kindness towards yourself when you're struggling.
So when you make a mistake or you're feeling like you're not good enough, instead of beating yourself up, you treat yourself gently, the way you would treat a friend who was going through the same thing.
Exactly. And research by psychologist Kristen Neff and others has shown that people who practice self-compassion actually tend to be more motivated, not less. People worry that if they're too kind to themselves, they'll get lazy, but it turns out the opposite is true.
Really? That surprises me, actually.
It surprises a lot of people, but think about it. If you have a very harsh inner critic constantly telling you that you're terrible, does that motivate you, or does it make you want to hide?
Honestly, it makes me want to hide. It makes me feel heavy and stuck.
Exactly. Whereas if you can say to yourself, okay, that didn't go well, that happens, what can I learn from this? You feel lighter. You feel more willing to try again.
Because you're not terrified of failing, because you know you'll be kind to yourself even if you do.
Precisely. The fear of the inner critic is often what holds people back more than anything else. We're afraid to try because we're afraid of how badly we'll speak to ourselves if we fail.
That's a really dark thought, actually, that we hold ourselves back to protect ourselves from our own self-criticism.
It is, and yet it's very common. I think many people do this without even realizing it.
So working on self-compassion isn't just a nice thing to do. It's actually a practical tool for getting more out of life.
It is, and it takes practice, like any skill. You have to keep choosing the kinder voice over the harsher one, over and over, until it starts to become more natural.
All right, let's take a slightly different angle here. I want to talk about something that I think is really relevant, which is the fear of what other people think.
Oh, yes, this is huge.
Because so much of self-doubt is not just about our own internal beliefs, it's about how we imagine we appear to other people.
Right, we're very social beings. We care deeply about belonging, about being accepted, about not being judged or rejected by others.
Which makes sense from an evolutionary perspective as well, right? Humans needed to be part of a group to survive. Being rejected from the group was genuinely dangerous.
Yes, and so that fear of judgment is wired into us. When we stand up to speak in public or share our ideas or try something new in front of others, that ancient alarm system goes off.
Even though the actual risk of being rejected from the group is very low. Nobody is going to throw you out of the village because you used the wrong grammar.
Nobody is, but the brain does not always know that.
So how do we work with this specifically, the fear of what other people think?
Well, one thing that helps is a little perspective shift that I find really useful. It is called the spotlight effect.
Oh, I have heard of this. Tell us what it is.
The spotlight effect is the human tendency to believe that other people are paying much more attention to us than they actually are. We feel like there's a spotlight on us, showing all our flaws and mistakes to the whole world.
But in reality,
most people are far too focused on their own lives, their own worries, their own thoughts to pay that much attention to us.
this is both comforting and a little bit humbling.
Right. You are not as invisible as you sometimes fear, but you are also not as watched as you sometimes worry.
So the embarrassing thing you said in a meeting last Tuesday,
Most of your colleagues have completely forgotten about it by now.
while you've been replaying it in your head every night before bed.
Exactly. The spotlight is much dimmer than we think, and understanding that can be really freeing.
And there's also something worth saying here about the people who do judge harshly, the people who are quick to criticize or mock others, because I think sometimes we over-focus on those people.
Yes. What would you say about them?
I think that the people who judge others most harshly are often the ones who are most afraid of being judged themselves. Very insecure people often express their insecurity by putting others down.
That's a really important observation. Someone who feels secure and confident in themselves rarely feels the need to mock or belittle others.
So if someone criticizes you harshly, especially in a mean-spirited way, it often says more about their own inner world than it says about you.
And that doesn't mean criticism is never valid. Sometimes feedback is genuinely useful, but there's a difference between constructive feedback and cruelty.
Constructive feedback. That's another good vocabulary moment, actually.
Oh yes, constructive means building something up. So constructive feedback is the kind that helps you improve. It points out what's not working, but in a helpful, specific way.
As opposed to destructive feedback, which just tears something down without offering any helpful direction.
Right. A teacher might say, your essay has a strong introduction, but the middle section loses focus. Try to organize your arguments more clearly. That's constructive.
Whereas someone saying, "This is terrible," is destructive. It doesn't tell you anything useful.
Exactly. And learning to receive constructive feedback without being destroyed by self-doubt is a really important skill.
Because I think a lot of people hear any criticism and immediately think, "I'm terrible, I'm a failure, I should give up."
Yes, the self-doubt amplifies the feedback. A small, specific critique becomes evidence for a sweeping conclusion about your worth as a person.
That's such a painful pattern.
It is. But again, it's something you can learn to notice and interrupt. When you receive criticism, you can practice asking yourself, is this specific? Is it actionable? Is there something genuinely useful here? And if yes, take the useful part and leave the rest.
And if the feedback is just mean and unhelpful?
Then it's okay to let it go. You don't have to hold on to every negative thing someone says about you.
Can we talk about the role of community and support here? Because I think one thing that helps enormously with self-doubt is the people around you.
Oh, absolutely. The people in your life matter so much. If you're surrounded by people who constantly criticize you, who minimize your dreams, who say that's not realistic every time you share an idea, it's very hard to build confidence.
And if you're surrounded by people who genuinely believe in you, who encourage you to try, who celebrate your small wins as well as your big ones, that makes an enormous difference.
It really does. We absorb the attitudes and beliefs of the people closest to us, often without realizing it.
So choosing your environment carefully, choosing who you spend your time with is not selfish. It's actually really important for your mental health and your growth.
Yes, and this doesn't mean cutting off everyone who ever disagrees with you. That's not healthy either. Good friends also challenge you and give you honest feedback.
But there's a difference between someone who challenges you because they believe in your potential and wants to help you grow, and someone who tears you down because they feel threatened by your growth.
Yes, very different motivations, and you can usually feel the difference.
Let's shift back to the language learning context for a moment, because I think this is really relevant for our listeners. We have a lot of people who are learning English and dealing with self-doubt about their language skills specifically.
Right, and language learning is actually one of the most vulnerable things you can do as an adult, because when you're learning a language, you have to be willing to look imperfect. You have to make mistakes in front of others.
And as a child, we don't really care about that. Kids just babble and experiment with language, and they don't feel embarrassed. But as adults, we have an ego to protect. We have an image we want to maintain. And speaking imperfect English in front of others feels very exposing.
So what would you say to someone who is struggling with that, who understands English reasonably well, but is too afraid to speak? I would say a few things. First, remember that anyone who judges you harshly for having an accent or making grammar mistakes while speaking a second language is someone who has likely never tried to learn another language themselves, because if they had, they would have enormous respect for what you're doing.
That's such a good point. Learning a language as an adult is genuinely hard. Anyone who has done it knows how much courage and persistence it takes.
Second, I would say start small. You don't have to give a speech. You don't have to have a deep philosophical conversation. Start with a simple exchange. Order your coffee in English if you get the chance. Say thank you or excuse me, or make a small comment.
Build the muscle slowly.
Exactly. Like going to the gym. You don't start by lifting the heaviest weight. You start light and build up gradually.
And every small success matters. Every time you use English and you're understood, that's a win. Put it in your confidence file.
Yes, every single one. And third, I would say find a community of other learners, because there's something really powerful about being around other people who are going through the same journey.
Like this podcast, in a way?
Yes, actually. Listening to content like this, being part of a community of English learners, knowing that you're not alone in your struggles, that can help enormously.
And when you see other learners who are at a similar level to you speaking English, it makes it feel less terrifying.
Because the bar comes down to a realistic place. You're not comparing yourself to a native speaker on BBC. You're comparing yourself to someone who, just like you, is doing their best with the tools they have.
I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, the growth mindset, because I think this is really central to the whole conversation about self-doubt.
Yes, let's dig into that. The growth mindset was a concept developed by psychologist Carol Dweck, and in simple terms, it's the belief that your abilities are not fixed, that you can grow, improve, and develop through effort and learning.
So if I have a growth mindset about my English, I believe that even if I'm not very fluent right now, I can become more fluent with practice and time.
Exactly, as opposed to a fixed mindset, which would say, I'm just not a language person. Some people can learn languages and some people cannot. I'm one of the ones who can't.
And the fixed mindset makes self-doubt so much more painful, because if your abilities are fixed, then every failure feels like proof that you're permanently limited.
Right, but if you believe in growth, a failure is just feedback. It tells you something isn't working yet. It doesn't mean it will never work.
Yet is such a powerful word.
It really is. Just adding yet to a sentence can change everything. I can't do this becomes I can't do this yet. That one small word opens the door to possibility.
I can't speak English fluently. Yet.
Yes, I haven't reached my goal. Yet. I don't understand everything I hear. Yet.
And each yet is an invitation to keep going.
Exactly. It says, this story is not finished. There's more to come.
I love that. Okay, let's also talk about something that I think often gets overlooked in conversations about self-doubt, which is the role of rest and self-care.
Oh, this is so important. Self-doubt often gets louder when we're tired, overwhelmed, or not taking care of ourselves.
Yes, think about how much more negative your inner voice becomes when you haven't slept well, or when you're hungry, or when you've been pushing yourself very hard with no breaks.
Absolutely. The brain in that state is not able to think clearly or regulate emotions well. Everything seems harder. Everything seems more threatening.
So sometimes the most productive thing you can do is actually to rest, to sleep, to eat properly, to take a walk, to do something that recharges you.
Because when you come back to the challenge from a place of more rest and more energy, your perspective often shifts. Things that felt impossible can start to feel manageable.
That sounds simple, but I don't think people give it enough credit.
Yes. And so that fear of judgment is wired into us. When we stand up to speak in public or share our ideas or try something new in front of others, that ancient alarm system goes off.
Even though the actual risk of being rejected from the group is very low, nobody is going to throw you out of the village because you used the wrong grammar.
I do not think they do. We live in a culture that often glorifies being busy. I will sleep when I'm dead. Rest is for the weak. Those kinds of messages.
And those messages are just wrong.
They are. Rest is not laziness. It is a necessary part of any sustainable effort. You cannot keep pouring from an empty cup.
Oh, that's a beautiful phrase. You cannot pour from an empty cup. What does that mean exactly for anyone who's not familiar?
Well, imagine a cup full of water. If someone needs water, you can give it to them from your cup. But if your cup is empty, you have nothing left to give. You need to fill it back up first.
So in terms of energy and effort, you need to replenish yourself before you can give your best effort to anything.
Exactly. And this applies to learning, to work, to relationships, to everything. You cannot keep giving and striving without also taking time to restore yourself.
I think that's a really important message, and I'm glad we're talking about it in the context of self-doubt, because sometimes the doubt is loudest precisely because you're running on empty.
Yes, give yourself some grace and some rest, and you may find the voice becomes a little quieter.
All right, let's get towards the later part of our conversation. I want to talk about something really practical. What does a day look like for someone who is actively working on reducing self-doubt?
Oh, I like this. Okay, I think it looks like someone who, first of all, is gentle with themselves in the morning. Instead of waking up and immediately scrolling through social media and starting to compare, they take a few moments just to breathe, to set an intention for the day.
What do you mean by set an intention?
Setting an intention means deciding in a conscious and deliberate way what you want to focus on or how you want to show up. It's different from setting a goal, which is very outcome-focused. An intention is more about the quality of your presence or your attitude.
So instead of, today I need to finish 3 chapters of my textbook, an intention might be, today I will approach my learning with curiosity and patience.
Yes, exactly. It's about the spirit in which you do things, not just what you accomplish.
I really like that distinction. Goals are important, but intentions shape how you experience the journey.
And the journey is where most of life is actually lived.
Okay, so the morning has a little gentleness, a little intention setting. What else does this day look like?
This person also notices when self-doubt shows up during the day. Maybe they have an important meeting and they start to feel nervous beforehand. Instead of pushing the feeling away or letting it spiral, they just acknowledge it. There's that anxiety again. That's okay. I've felt this before and I got through it.
Just acknowledging it without fighting it.
Yes, fighting a feeling often makes it stronger, but just observing it, giving it a name, tends to take some of its power away.
That's very much in line with mindfulness practices.
It is, and you don't have to be a meditation expert to do this. Just a moment of awareness can help.
What about when something goes wrong during the day, when they make a mistake?
This is where self-compassion really comes in. Instead of immediately thinking, I'm so stupid, I can't believe I did that, this person takes a breath and says something kinder. That didn't work out the way I hoped. What can I learn from this?
And then they actually move on. They don't spend the next 4 hours replaying the mistake in their head.
Right. Easier said than done, I know, but with practice, it gets more natural. You learn to process the mistake, take the lesson, and let it go.
And at the end of the day?
At the end of the day, they might take a moment to think of 1 or 2 things that went well. Maybe they spoke up in a meeting. Maybe they tried something new and it was uncomfortable, but they did it anyway. Maybe they were kind to someone. Small things.
Building the confidence file.
Building the confidence file, because what you focus on grows. If you consistently end your day by noticing what went right, over time, your brain starts to look for more of those things throughout the day.
Training your attention.
Training your attention, exactly.
I love this picture. It doesn't sound like a perfect day. It still has difficulties and doubts and mistakes.
No, life is not a perfect day, but it's a day where the person is working with themselves, not against themselves.
That's such a nice way to put it. Working with yourself, not against yourself.
And I think that's really the essence of what we're talking about today. Self-doubt is not an enemy to be destroyed. It's a part of being human, but you get to decide how much power you give it. You get to practice hearing it without automatically obeying it.
Right. The doubt speaks, but you decide whether to act on it or not.
You are the one who gets to choose.
That's powerful. Okay, we're getting close to the end of today's episode of Easy Speak. Let's bring things together and look back at what we've covered.
We started by talking about what self-doubt actually is, that inner voice that questions your abilities and makes you feel uncertain about yourself, often without any real basis in fact.
We talked about where it comes from, childhood experiences, the messages we receive from the people around us, the comparisons we make with others, especially through social media.
We looked at how self-doubt shows up in daily life, in career decisions, in relationships, in small everyday moments where you hold back something valuable because you're not sure it's good enough.
And we talked about the really important insight that confidence comes from action, not before it. You don't wait until you feel ready. You act, and then readiness starts to build.
We explored some practical approaches, noticing the voice instead of obeying it automatically, looking at the evidence, practicing self-compassion, surrounding yourself with people who genuinely support you.
We talked about the spotlight effect and how other people are generally much less focused on your mistakes than you fear they are.
We talked about the growth mindset and how adding the word yet to your limitations can open a door to possibility.
And we talked about rest and self-care, because sometimes the self-doubt is loudest when you're simply exhausted and need to restore yourself.
It's been a rich conversation, and I hope it feels relevant and real, because all of these things are things that real people face every single day.
Including us.
Including us, yes. Neither of us is immune to self-doubt. We just keep practicing.
And I think that's actually the most reassuring thing we can say. You don't have to be a finished product. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to keep practicing with honesty and with kindness towards yourself.
Yes, the journey matters. The practice matters. Every small step forward matters.
Before we close today's episode, we have a question for you, our listener reflection for this episode.
Yes, here it is. Think about one area of your life where self-doubt has been holding you back. What is one small step you could take this week to move forward despite that doubt?
Just one small step. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just one thing.
We would love to hear your answer in the comments. Share your thoughts with our community. We read your comments and we love hearing from you.
Your words encourage other people too. When you share honestly about your own experience, someone else who's going through something similar feels a little less alone.
And that matters more than you know.
All right, that brings us to the end of today's episode of Easy Speak. Thank you so much for spending this time with us.
It means a lot to us that you choose to learn English through conversations like this one. We put a lot of heart into every episode, and knowing that you're listening makes that worthwhile.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving us a comment and sharing it with someone you know who might find it helpful.
And if you're new here, welcome. We have many more episodes waiting for you, covering all kinds of topics in clear, natural English designed to help you grow.
Keep going, keep practicing, and remember, the doubt is just a thought. You are so much more than that voice.
Until next time, take care of yourselves, be kind to yourselves, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye for now, everyone. Keep speaking, keep growing.
Take care.